In this video, we're going to talk about sorting and grouping data inside of a pivot table. So here's our data. We have a date, and then they take the date apart. So we have a year column, a month, and a weekday. We have some hotels in a certain location, right? City, state, region. In those hotels, we have rooms or motels, and the rooms are rented, which then gives us an occupancy rate and a total revenue. So just for fun, if I hit the end down arrow, we have 17,000 rows, 17,548 of data. So it's a significant amount of data. And we're going to start out with already having created a pivot table, so you don't have to watch me do that. It's a revenue by year. So I drag the year column down to, or year down to columns. I'm grabbing the revenue column and putting that in values. And then we have the region and the motel name in the row area. Now, let's say I want to sort this data to be different than what we currently see. There's a couple ways of doing it. One is you can manually drag things around. So I just collapsed that central one, but I can grab it with that four-headed arrow and move it above Eastern and then collapse it. And so now I've just dragged central above Eastern, which is above Western. I could do the same thing again. I'm just going to grab this and put it above Eastern. Anyway, so the point being, you can drag things around. That's not a way I do it very often. The more obvious way is if you hit these buttons. We're going to talk about filtering in a minute. But for sorting, I can just say, oh yeah, let's sort this A to Z. So then it just does your traditional alphabetical. Or I could do it on the motel name. Now that's going to be the motel name within the group. So if I were to run over here and sort this A to Z, within the central region, these motel names are now sorted by group. Now the other thing is, I can sort this field based on another field. So I can click on this, and we've just been hitting A to Z or Z to A, but there's a more sort options button. So I hit that, and over here you can now see manually you can drag, but ascending on motel name, well, there's a drop down box here, so I can say total revenue. So rather than sorting the motels based on their name, I'm going to sort them based on something in a different column. So I can either go ascending or descending on total revenue. I'll go ahead and hit that. And so again, within the group of central, this hotel has the most revenue, followed by Valentine Lodge as the least revenue. So that's can be kind of handy. I'm going to sort on a value in the values area. Now, if you look at this sort in the year 2020, notice I have 783, or 08 is ahead of 1745, right? So that's not sorted by what we thought was the revenue. Well, the problem is when we did this right here, where to go more sort option, we said total revenue, right? Well, we have 2 years worth of revenue, so what year is it using? Well, it's actually using the grand total, which we don't even have visible. So that's how it's figuring out how to do this sort. It's based on the grand total. There is an option for that right here under more options on that same sort dialog box. You click here, and it's been selected grand total. So what you can do is say, no, I want to sort on the 2020 year, or you could choose the 2021 year. So if you don't want the grand total, you can choose to sort by 1 year or the other. So now I'll hit OK, and then theoretically we just did it based on the 2021 year. And again, you have a situation where 08 went ahead of 45, but that's in 2020, and we specifically asked it to do 2021. Now let's talk about how to filter this data. So in the same area where we've been sorting A to Z, there are ways to filter your data. So I only want to see specific records. I don't need to see everything that I've displayed in my pivot table. So there's several ways to do it. One is just what we call a manual filter. You have a list of checkboxes and you can just uncheck one of them. So I'll hit Eastern and go, okay, I just want to see Central and Western, and that's it. Or I will clear that filter, which is right here. Under year, I may only want to see 1 year. So I'll just say, no, I just want to see 2021 in that case. So that would be a manual filter. You're just checking or unchecking a particular checkbox. The other way you can filter is based on a label. And so label and value filters are going to be the same. One we're dealing with text and one we're dealing with numbers. So with the label filter, you have equals, does not equal, does not begin with, begins with, ends with, does not end with, contains, does not contain. And so you have all sorts of choices down here. So I think the example in the book where this is generated from, they do a label filter looking for the word sweet. So in that case, I can just put the contains, and then I want to type the word sweets. And now I'm going to filter all of the hotels that have sweets in the name. Another thing with the value filters, let's do one of those. I'm going to clear this filter. I can run over here. I will do a value filter. Let's just say it's greater than or equal to, but notice the field that it shows up with here is the total revenue. So kind of like sort, how I can sort one field based on another column. I'm doing that here. I'm going to say the total revenue has to be equal to or greater than 2 million. And now this is filtered based on a value in the revenue column. All right, now can you filter on more than, with two filters? Can I have two filters on a single field? The answer is you can, but you have to turn on an option first. So again, I'm on the Pivot Table Analyze tab. I hit this option button over here in the Pivot Table group, and then there's a tab here called Totals and Filters. If I wanted to filter this motel both on name, some kind of name criteria, and the value criteria, I need to allow for that. So right here is a checkbox to say allow multiple filters per field. So now I can do a label filter that contains the word sweets. Hit OK. In addition, I can now do another filter, value filter, that says it must be greater than 2 million. Hopefully that's 2 million. And there we go. So that's a multiple filter. Without having turned that on, that wouldn't have worked. The last type of filter I'll show you is similar to value and label filter. I have to go to a different pivot table that has dates. And so I'm going to run over to this weekly occupancy pivot table. And all we did was drag the date column down to rows. The motel name is up here as a filter, and then there's a column called occupancy rate. So just to demonstrate this other filter, here's what my pivot table looks like. So I have this date column with obviously dates where we're capturing the occupancy information. I don't want to see all of these dates. Well, because that's a date column, before this used to say label filter, it now has the word date filter. And because of that, we can all of a sudden see, I can say, hey, show me everything that was last month, this month, next month, last week. And you also have choices here. None of these are going to work given when this video is created and when these dates are. But I can do things like between. And so then I can choose 2 dates. You can actually even pick it off the calendar. So it looks like all of these are in the year 2020. So I'm going to say, show me everything between February 1st and run over here, say March 31st. So I want to just grab those 2 months. And so now that data is filtered on February, March information. So that's it. Pretty handy tools. I've used a lot, date and value filters and the label filters. And by the way, we talked about manually filtering, and every once in a while I'll say, I'm going to clear my filter here. I'll tell students I want to see data from March and February. Well, what they'll do is they'll scroll through here and just sit here and start unchecking things, right? And so if there's only a few checkboxes, this is appropriate. But if you have months and months of data and you're just trying to see things from March and February, then yeah, this would be inappropriate to do it this way. It's just going to take too long. You don't have time to sit there and unselect the things you don't want to see. You need to run up here to date filters and say, oh, I need it between these 2 months. And so there's kind of a fine line between when should I be unchecking things and when should I use the date or label filters or the value filters. And it's just about your time. How long does it take to uncheck these things? So that's it. That's about sorting and filtering data in a pivot table.